So hi guys, so someone asked for a glass-like login page and it's here. So let's get started. So right here I have a blank HTML template and also an empty style.css file. So the very first thing I'm going to do is to link up my CSS. Take note of this style.css file name. This has to correspond to your existing file name. So the very next thing, let's create a login div. This one will hold this login page. And before you even continue writing the styles, let's go ahead and install some fonts. I'm going to use a font called Inter. So head over to fonts.google.com, search for Inter, then click the first link. There on the bottom you can see get font. So just click get font, get embed code, and then copy the import. So make sure you don't have other fonts. They will be listed here. You can just delete them if you don't want. And also, so you can go ahead and copy the inter font. So just paste it in your style file. So we are done with that. The next thing we are going to do is to add the default styles. So one of the default styles is the margin of 0. So by using a star, we are selecting every element in the page. So we remove the margins, we remove the paddings, and we specify box sizing of border box. I've already talked about border box. This one is whereby you want the styles whenever you apply widths and margins to an element, then you go ahead and apply maybe paddings. Those paddings are inclusive inside the width. So if I have an element like this one is 300 pixels and I add 10 pixels padding, that means there's 10 pixels padding this side, this side, this side, and this side. So since we are talking the width, let the padding be inclusive of the width. So that's what the border box does. The next thing I'm going to do is that we have just installed a font. So I'm going to specify the font family. The font we have just imported is Inter. And then as a fallback, we'll use sans serif. So the Inter comes from here. So if you can see here, I don't know whether you can see here. So the Inter font is that which has been just imported. The next thing you can realize is that we do have some background images going around, and also we also have some icons. So to get those, head over to my bio, and then when you head over to my bio, you land into this website. You land here, then look for GitHub. This one is the GitHub. Click on that GitHub link, then go to the repositories and look for a project called TikTok projects. And then in the TikTok projects, look for a project called Glass Login. So you should see a project called Glass Login. So here it is. So just click on the Glass Login. Then you can see the background image, the Facebook SVG, the Google SVG, and the Twitter SVG. So go ahead and copy them, and then let's proceed. So I'll just drag them from my other window. So we need the background, Facebook, Google, and Twitter. So then you can just drag them. This is the background image you're talking about. You can see this image. Then the Facebook SVG, Google SVG, and the Twitter SVG. So these are the assets you need to grab. So let's continue. So here in the HTML, the very first thing we are going to do is that we are inside the login. This is what we are inside at. So we are going to first create the heading. We just type out a heading. We're going to use a heading level 2. Say come back. You can see it. And then the next thing we are going to do now is that we have these two fields. So I'm going to scope them inside a div called field. Inside the field, I'll have the label. The first label will point to the email. And I said in my last video is that the reason we use the for in the label is that whenever I click on the label, I want to highlight the input. So if you can see, I'm clicking on the label and the input is getting highlighted. So that's the work of the for. All right. So the label now here says email. So we go ahead and we can create now an input of type email. So I'm not going to add this name because you're not submitting this form. And then the ID will be email. So this ID has to match whatever you added in the for. This is what tells the label when you click, then act on this. So the final thing I'm going to add here is a placeholder. So the placeholder is John at example.com. So since we have two fields, I'm just going to copy this down. And then this one will be password. Let's change the label to password. And then also change the placeholder to, I'm going to use, let's use, I don't know, make that one work. And then let's here we can say password. And then here we can say password. So this one has to also match the for in the label. Finally, let's continue. Let's add a button. The button says sign in. We are done with the button. Then the next thing, as you can see, so you're just following along here. The next thing is this description. So I'm going to create a div that holds these two elements. So this text and the socials. I'm going to call it bottom. And then let's create a paragraph and call it or continue with. And then next up, we're going to create the socials. So we're going to use a div with a class of socials. And then let's add three images. We can say image times 3. The first image will point to Facebook. So we can just go to the Facebook. The next one points to Twitter. So we can say twitter.svg. And one points to Google. So we can say Google. And also something else I want to do here on my images is that I want to wrap them inside divs because you can see there's a background color going around. So I think we could do div. And then let's wrap these images inside these new divs. So second one, and then the image, the final one. So we can create a div and then the image. Right, so we are done with the HTML markup. So let's go live and see what we have. So I showed you how you can go live using the live server extension. So how this one works is that, let me see, go to the extensions tab. So this is the extensions tab. You can see it here. Search for an extension called live server. So you can see it. This is the extension. Install it. Click on install if you don't have it. So click on install, and then after installing, on the bottom you'll see something saying go live. So mine says, let me make this. So mine says port 5000. So if I go off, you can see there's a button that says go live. So after installing that extension, this is the extension, this is the text you are going to find. And then if you click go live, it will go live for you. So that's it. So the next thing is that you can see these images are too huge. So we are going to cap their width. So we can give them a width of maybe 20 pixels. So you can say 20 pixels. And then you can see those images here. So the next thing I'm going to do before we forget is that we're going to add the background image. So let's add a background image. You can say background. So you can say a background image. Background image. Then you use the URL and then we grab the background dot JPG. So you can see the background image has been added. So the next thing is that let's make sure that the width of the body and the height are filling the screen. So how we can do that is we say height of 100 viewport height. Viewport height is the current viewport. So the current, like this whole viewport. And also the width, you can specify the width as 100 viewport with. So viewport is this, you can see this whole page. Okay. And then we have to specify the background size. We want it to cover the whole. You can see now it has zoomed in because it is covering the whole viewport. And then there's a new property that we always had, background repeat. You can say no repeat. So this one prevents the image. If the image does not fill the whole page, we don't want it to repeat itself, right? Something else is that we can add an overflow of hidden. So if anything tries to go beyond the specified width and height, then hide it, right? So finally, let's push the this content to the center. So we can say display flex, justify content center. You can see the content is in the center now. Then you can see, let me grab the login. So this whole thing is, we give it a class of login. So you can say, let's add a color of white here because right now we can see what we are working with. Okay, we can see them now. So the next issue is that the content is too close to the edges, so we can add some paddings to the body. So you can say padding to rem. Okay, so that's nice. So let's go to the login. Let's first cap the width. So the width you want it to be at around 400 pixels. So you can say width is 400 pixels. And then let's display this flex and then flex direction column so that we can add some gaps between the elements. So we can say display flex direction of column, then a gap of maybe 1 rem. Now you can see they are trying to fill the whole space. So before we continue with the login page, we are just going to, you can see the label and the input, they are both side by side. We want them to be stacked. So let's go back and stack them. So we can grab them, we give them a class of field. You can say dot field, and then you can say display flex direction column. Okay, that looks nice. And then let's add some gaps. So you can say a gap of maybe 0.4 rem or 0.3 rem. That's fantastic. So the next thing, let's style these inputs. So for the inputs, we are just going to grab them by their tag name. So we can say input. Let's first add some paddings. We can say padding vertical 8 pixels, padding horizontal 10 pixels. Okay, you can see the inputs now. They look big, but it's okay. Let's remove the borders on the. Let's first remove. I think we can add a background color that is quite transparent. So we can say RGBA. Then we want the white one. So 255, 255, 255, and then an opacity of 0.09. Okay. Yeah, so you can see the opacity of 0.09. All right, so now you can realize that there is some weird borders that are going along. So after the background color, let's add a border of 1 pixel solid, and then we want a whitish that is not quite white. So we can just do 255, 255, 255, and then 0.6. All right, so now you can see we have a border. The next thing you might realize is that the edges are too sharp. So we can add a border radius, 5 pixels. Fantastic. The next thing you might realize is that the placeholder is not visible. So we can grab the placeholder of the inputs by saying input and then placeholder. And then we can give it a color of still RGB. Then 255, 255, 255, and then 0.7. So we are giving it a color. Okay, you can see now it's a bit visible. So finally, let's type in the input and see. So the input's color is black. So we can go back to the input and we can say color of white whenever someone is typing. Okay, and then we failed to add that. Okay, so that is fantastic. So I know the most weighted moment is whereby we add some background color to the login. So let's go back to the login. Let's first add a background color to the login. So you can say background color. So we want to add a very faded color and then we can blur it out to create the illusion of a glass. So the background color should be RGB A 125, 125, 125, and then an opacity of 0.3. So you can see it. And then something else is that the height, need the height to be fitting the content instead of taking up the full width. So fit content. You can now see it. And then let's add some paddings. So we can do padding of 1.5. Yeah. Okay, things are looking nice now. Let's also add some border radius. So it's always good to keep the border radius the same for uniformity. So you're just going to use 5 pixels. So in the most weighted moment is to add the glass effect. We can do that by adding a blur effect. So we can say blur. No, we are going to add a filter, background filter. No, background, backdrop. Then we blur. And then we can add a blur of something like 5 pixels. And then now you can see we have the glass-like effect. So we are done with those sections. Then the next section we are going to deal with is let's put this text to, so something is wrong. Okay guys, so let's continue. So my Google Chrome had some weird issues. So the very next thing I wanted us to add is that we wanted to put this text to the center. So this text is the heading level 2. So getting up the heading level 2. So you can just grab it by heading level 2, text align of center. Okay. So we are done with that section. The next section, let's work on the button. So we only have one button. So that means we can just grab it by its tag name. So we can say button. And then this button, let's add some paddings to it. We can say padding 10 pixels. You can see now the button is a bit huge. So let's remove borders. You can say border none. And then let's add a very faded background color. So which will be RGBA 255, 255, 255. And then an opacity of 0.2. Okay, so not 0.02, 0.2. You can see it. Then let's change the color to white. So we can say color white. All right, then a border radius of 5 pixels. So we have to be uniform. Fantastic. The next thing, let's now tackle the bottom section. So we can say bottom. And then display this flex direction of, nothing has changed. And then let's text align to the center, or we align self center. You can see they move to the center, but you also need to text align the text. So when this text can be too long, then text align center will work on the rest. All right. So I was still facing some issues, so I had to use Brave. So let's get finished. So As I was saying, is that whenever this text is too large, so still not visible. So as I was saying, if this text is too large, so this text here, then the text align will kick in and paste the text as we would expect. So that's it for that section. Let's tackle the divs. These divs, the socials. So we gave them a class of socials. You can see here. So we have these socials, which inside the socials we have divs. So, but if before you forget, let's grab this and change its color. So we can say dot bottom, then direct child paragraph. Then you can give it a color of RGBA. Then you can use this color. You can see it. So we just change the opacity, and then let's also minimize the font. So font size of 0.86. Right. So let's tackle the socials. We can say socials, and then the first thing is display flex to them. So you can see them. Let's add some gaps between the items. So you can say gap of 0.4. We are done with that section. Let's go back to the bottom and add some gaps, because you can see this text is too close to the icon. So you can say gap of 0.8. Fantastic. So inside the socials, we have direct child divs. You can grab these divs. So these are the divs you are going to add a background color of white to them. So we are going to do dot socials, grab the direct children div. So these children are, we can give it a background color of white. You can see it. And then after adding the background color of white, let's add some paddings. We can say padding 0.4 em. Then let's add a border radius of 50%. So you can see there's some weird shapes. So we can use flexbox to position these items to the center. So we can say display flex and flex direction. We don't care about the flex direction. So we can just align items center and justify center. So you can see everything sits in the center. So I think that's it, guys. And also, I think we can make sure the label as well has the same style. Okay. So that's it, guys. That's how you can add this glass effect on a login page. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, follow, and share with your friends. Write it down a comment. Let me know what you think. Thank you.